You're listening to Contesting Wrestling, a podcast where I am on a mission to try to understand why people enjoy wrestling, because I, like most of society, don't understand what the appeal is. I guess I understand the appeal. Like, we've made it that far in this many episodes. But I really go back and forth. My name is Evan Burke. I do stuff on the internet sometimes, I guess, is my claim to fame.
What does anyone do?
Yeah, what does anyone do?
Someone pay Evan for doing stuff, particularly this podcast, by contributing to our Patreon, patreon.com/contestingwrestling.
And I mean, he says like, he's trying to understand wrestling, which he doesn't like. But see, the original idea I had for the podcast was contesting wieners, where we reviewed hot dog restaurants. But no,
Yes.
he wanted to suffer.
I could go for a nice hot wiener.
That actually would have been worse. That I would have suffered more for that. I find it is love a sausage, not a big hot dog guy.
I never said hot dogs. I said wieners.
You said hot dog restaurants, though.
You also said restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Gray's Papaya, where you can get the hot dogs and the various sausages.
We would visit every papaya dog in the city and decide which one's the nastiest.
Were you suggesting that we were going to go to dick restaurants? Because I am on board for that podcast.
Or not. I hope that you don't mean that we were going to go to restaurants where they serve dachshund dogs.
Or physically weak men.
No.
Yes.
So I refrain from commenting.
Right, so my name is Doc Diamondfire. I've been in... We're doing the intros. I've been in professional wrestling.
We are.
This is the Orange Cassidy episode. We
Yeah,
can be extra silly.
We've all gone insane in quarantine. I've been involved in professional wrestling for a little more than 11 years. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done wrestling, ring announcing, commentary, and I'm very happy to be on this podcast. Professor.
I am Dr. Ben Abelson. I am a professor of philosophy at Mercy College. I am also very happy to be on this podcast. It is one of my few anchors to reality still remaining during these
And I am,
difficult
as
times.
always, Katie Vella, a.k.a. Ref Katie on Twitter. I am a professional referee. I am, I have been involved in wrestling since 2014. I've been a fan of wrestling since 2003. I will be doing the spin-off podcast, Contesting Wieners. It will be done solo. I also have a Twitch channel. You can follow that at Over Here Counting on Twitch. I mostly do Pokemon Nuzlocke. It's going. We'll say that.
So you're going to do a solo show with wieners? is
Yes.
you're
What
saying,
kind of
Kate.
wieners?
I
That is
presume
to
a
be
different one on each episode.
Nice.
I've been solo contesting my wiener a great deal in quarantine.
Oh.
Wrestling with it, even.
There we go. Sorry, I had to remove my cat from the situation. Today, all right. So
From the wiener contesting situation?
it's why he was getting his claws are very sharp on my
Oh.
lap.
I know we're all... Leave the cats alone.
It is. I didn't do it intentionally.
very
He's
lonely.
just scratchy. Yeah. So, anyway, if this is the first episode you're listening to, sorry. You know what? It's actually better.
Probably not by now.
Yes, yeah. Although it's better that you know long term what you're getting into. So I'm not sorry. The way that this works is Doc and Katie and Ben are, sort of trying to take me on a journey through wrestling, because I love and respect all of them as people, as artists, and all that, and they try to help me understand why they love and have invested so much of their time and life into wrestling. And sometimes they tell me, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to cover this. And then sometimes I'm like, I feel like I want to learn about this thing, or we come across somebody in our travels and I'm like, I just need to know about this wrestler. And that is very much what has happened today.
Yeah, I think this is a case where we've all been looking forward to doing this episode for a while
Yes,
now.
very much so.
Like, this is where our interests converge.
Especially coming out of 6 Mick Foley-centered or Mick Foley-inspired episodes in which I have watched a lot of barbed wire go into a lot of people. These comparatively lighthearted, though at least one still fairly brutal match. I don't know. It was a breath of fresh air. Also, I kind of just feel like Orange Cassidy, if I was a kid looking to get into wrestling, Orange Cassidy would not only be my favorite wrestler, but I would probably be a lifetime wrestling fan if that was the foundation I was building on. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I just, like, for me, seeing him and seeing what he did was such a, even as an adult, I mean, trying to get into wrestling, it was such a breath of fresh air.
By the way, it is Orange Cassidy's birthday on the day that we're recording this, May the 4th. So happy birthday, OC. And, you know, he's been signed to AEW, and he's on national TV every week, and they're starting to really push him. To me, he's one of my favorite wrestlers in the world right now anyway, but to me, he's one of, you know, the most interesting characters on AEW by far. And so the next generation of wrestling fans may very well grow up watching Orange Cassidy.
I sure hope they do.
And I think nothing could be better for the future of the industry.
What you think of Orange Cassidy as largely what I think of him, and we all think of him, is certainly not a universal. There are definitely people that don't like his style. They don't like the very meta of his actions, and it's exactly the people that wouldn't like it that would make the kids today think he's even cooler. And that all goes towards hoping that he just continues to rise and continues to become a bigger and bigger star.
Yeah, he's an interesting case, largely in that a lot of the criticisms that some of the wrestling traditionalists might raise against him, that I think are appropriately targeted at other kinds of recent wrestling phenomena, I think Cassidy really evades those things. Like, I think those kinds of criticisms, and we'll talk about them, don't apply to him as much as they do to other things. And I think he really is like a unique phenomenon in professional wrestling.
Watching the 3 matches that we watched for today, I had this realization about Cassidy, based on, you know, what I've learned about how characters work in wrestling thus far, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you could sort of say there is a spectrum of wrestling characters, where on one end you've got straight up gimmicks, one joke characters. I'm trying to think of, I don't know, Isaac Yankem. Right, DDS, like,
He's
so, like,
the dentist.
Yeah, exactly. Or the $1 Million Man, or somebody
He's
like
rich.
that, where, you know, there's like one thing and it all works in that. And then you've all the way on the other end of the spectrum, you've got guys who are maybe who are just sort of these like beings out of the ether. You know, Randy Savage is maybe an example. Or where or like Ric Flair, we've talked about, is this, where it's like Ric Flair is like, you can't really sum up his character, but he's also not like a normal person. Like, he's not just a dude, Ric Flair. Like, there's just a lot of stuff going on that's hard to describe. And to me, Orange Cassidy, at first glance, seems like a gimmick. Seems like it's a one joke thing. But because of how... But I think that he really is a combination of the two things. I really think that he is, because it's not... It's not just one joke. It's not just like, oh, he doesn't care. That is the initial thing. That's like the surface joke, right. But because that would not work if that was actually his character. I've said this before about him, where what's interesting is that he should not work. The character should not work. A comedic character that just doesn't care, or
a
is
wrestler
just apathetic.
Who doesn't care, especially right, who's in a match that they're supposed to be trying to win.
There's another guy across the ring that's trying to beat the crap out of them.
The thing about Orange Cassidy that makes it work, though, is that he does care about winning. He doesn't care about much, right? He's a very nonchalant individual.
Yes.
But when it comes down to, winning the match and being a successful pro wrestler, in the end, so he's sort of, I think one way that I've thought about it is he generally doesn't care, and he's weaponized his not caring against his opponent to fool them into dropping their guard so that he can then defeat
If I could bring this to a comparison to kung fu movies, it's akin to like Drunken Master, something like that, where somebody is
Very
just
much so.
like their fighting style is that you don't think they can even stand up, let alone land a punch, let alone knock you out. But no, that's just how they're moving. You can't figure out what's happening next. And to your point about it being a combination of those two kinds of characters, a lot of people that have the first type of character, where it's a very simple character that you can immediately identify all of it when they come out these days, they rely on that because they can't do more. The wrestlers that do these characters. Now you can grow into something more, but Orange Cassidy isn't using his character or the I don't care shtick as a crutch. He can do anything.
Oh, and he trust me, he can do literally anything.
Yeah, the two of you trained with him quite extensively, right?
Yeah,
Doc and Katie.
I've been in the ring with Orange Cassidy. Like his strikes are no joke, his movements are no joke. Just think about the amount of bodily control and athleticism it actually takes to do everything with your hands by your sides in your pockets.
He's genuinely probably one of the best wrestlers in the world today.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, he started the Orange Cassidy kind of as like a side joke gimmick thing with his friends.
I mean, who knows? Just
okay. That's what it seemed like.
It seems so natural for Orange Cassidy to be Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, I mean, some of it he's kind of just like that. Not to get too much into it, but he's kind of just like that.
Yeah, he's a unique guy. That's for sure.
It kind of reminds me, especially you talked about comparing him to a drunken master. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Jackie Chan in a broad sense, where it's just like he is we've talked before about, like, we had an episode where we were talking about how, like, a lot of great comedic actors are like still great dramatic actors because they're just like they're really good at acting, kind of, and it's sort of like he can only express that character through that physicality because he has just absolute control over his body. Yeah. Like true martial arts level. Like there was I think in the match with David Starr, he does like or it might have even been with Kikutaru. I'm trying to remember now. But he there are so many times when he counters a hold or like flips a guy with his hands in his pockets, and I'm like rewinding it, watching this, trying to figure it out, and it's just like the level of technique. I mean, it's like he's also kind of like, like Victor Borgia or somebody like that, where, taking this this virtuosity and using it to make it look like he sucks. And because to truly communicate that, you need to kind of be a master of it.
It's kind of like a Philip Glass minimalism too, right? It's like,
well, after so many years of indie wrestlers trying to do as many moves as possible, the guy that doesn't but is still clearly of that mold is unique.
I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're thinking about it realistically, you want to use the least energy possible at every moment in the match.
To conserve it.
Makes
sense to me.
I would say he's less like Philip Glass, if we're going to make a weird musical comparison. I would say that he's kind of like the Robert Fripp, Brian Eno collaborations, where where you've got this like unbelievable breadth of skill and technique and talent being being used to create like very chill, sort of pleasant seeming soundscapes that still wind up being very intense towards the end.
Okay. That sounds right.
So let's get into the matches, if you don't mind. What did we watch this week?
Yeah. The first thing we watched was Orange Cassidy against Johnny Cockstrong from Beyond Wrestling Welcome Home Night 1.
Speaking of contesting wieners,
moving
on.
Cockstrong would likely win any such battle, unless it were against Joey Ryan, perhaps.
He was doing that stuff before Joey Ryan.
Way before Joey Ryan, that's true. And I remember I went to Joey Ryan's penis party, this wrestling show he put on last WrestleMania weekend, and I thought it was an oversight that Johnny Cockstrong wasn't involved. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he couldn't make it.
Maybe there's beef.
So this was...
Maybe there's wieners. Wiener beef.
All beef wieners.
100%.
Dongs!
Yeah. Okay. So, yes, this show, Beyond Welcome Home Night 1, was part of a double header at the Chikara Wrestle Factory that I was there for. You can
We
actually
saw
see
you.
me
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end.
at the end of the match. But actually, if you watch the beginning of the show, there's this whole thing where Mr. Touchdown throws a football into the audience and then asks for it back, but then the person doesn't throw it back and instead they throw it to LAX. And that was me. You can't. I'm off screen, but you can see the football.
There
going
you
on.
go.
You're such
Anyway.
a troll, Ben.
Yeah. Mr. Touchdown. Give me a break. Anyway, so as part of this doubleheader, it was the first Beyond show I had ever been to. And it was an amazing show. It was the first time I ever saw Jordan Grace. First time I ever saw MJF. Tessa Blanchard was in the main event with Princess Kimberly. But perhaps my favorite match of the entire night was Orange Cassidy versus Johnny Cockstrong. Two of my favorite, like, comedic, for lack of a better term, wrestlers in the world doing what they do best.
No,
Now, I will say about Johnny Cockstrong, like, I like Johnny Cockstrong, but he's an example of a guy that has that simple gimmick and then just leans on it. Like, that's his entire act.
what was his gimmick? I didn't pick up on anything. I didn't pick up on
Oh,
any
no?
kind of really specific. No, yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't.
No,
really
like,
get what his
area
deal was.
of his body that he's,
No. No.
his whole moveset revolves around.
No.
I am very bad at sensing sarcasm through Zoom, Evan. You're going to have to be a little more clear.
Actually,
You see,
the most disturbing thing about Johnny Cockstrong to me is that he is a penis-themed wrestler, and he also bears what I felt to be a profound physical resemblance to Jared Kushner. And so this match kind of
Well,
made me think
yeah.
about Jared Kushner's
mean,
penis. So thanks.
I always thought Jared Kushner resembled 180 pounds of flaccid cock meat.
He does.
So
Jared
you know.
Kushner does look like if an unpleasant penis was a person, like a clammy penis.
It's like if God was about to make another human, but realized he hadn't gone to the human parts store to get new human parts, but all he had was like spare fucking testicle meat and flaccid ball skin and cock parts. So he just kind of molded it into a sad excuse for a human made of goo, and it called it Jared Kushner.
He's got a real non-practicing serial killer vibe.
Now, what do
now-
you mean non-practicing?
Despite this
no way
visual
Johnny
comparison,
Cockstrong's 180 pounds. Yep.
yeah, I am a fan of Johnny Cockstrong.
Yeah,
I remember
same.
when we first discovered him on the internet, him and Beyond Wrestling at the same time.
Right.
And then we went to King of Trios that year, and sitting there at the Beyond table was Drew Cordero, a.k.a. Denver, Colorado, the man, not the place, who's the guy who
Yes.
runs Beyond. And there were T-shirts there, one of which I still have that I bought, but I was like,
It's a good shirt.
hey, why isn't there a Johnny Cockstrong T-shirt? And Drew Cordero was like, why don't you ask Johnny Cockstrong? And there he was. And he was a very friendly, affable fellow. So
Well, that's nice.
yeah. I will hear nothing
That's
bad
nice.
said about Mr. Cockstrong.
Oh no, I mean he was generally I did enjoy this match. I enjoy the idea of two wrestlers with some degree of gimmick trying to figure out how to make their gimmicks work with each other.
Yeah.
You know,
How does this work together?
yeah.
The answer is spitting orange juice into Johnny Cockstrong's dick.
Right. One other personal note here. Doc was there. I guess you and Katie were both worked the Chikara show backstage earlier in the day.
Yeah.
Likely, yeah. Yeah. That was that was the show Tessa Blanchard was asleep at, right?
I think it might have been.
Right.
I think it
remember that,
was,
yeah.
right. That's a whole
So-
other story. Yeah.
So, Doc, you and I both witnessed this as it was
Yeah.
happening. So, Chikara is a kids show, and there was a discount for kids. And so after the Chikara show was over, we both saw this parent come up to Drew Cordero and be like, hey, does the discount apply to the Beyond show as well? And Drew was like, well, it's not really a kids show. And he had exactly this match in mind, and you hear him say it on
Yeah.
commentary, like, hey, they ended up coming to the show, but if,
I told him.
The
Yeah,
I warned
afternoon
them.
show. Yeah, the afternoon show was for all ages. Beyond is a little bit of a free for all, and that's they advertise as such. You kind of get what you see with Beyond, a full smorgasbord of indie wrestling, including all the adult stuff.
They advertise as such, and as such, they pack the house.
Yes. They came in droves to see Johnny Cockstrong. And, and Orange Cassidy do their thing. Yeah, so Cassidy goes directly for Cockstrong's package. Like, he's not afraid of the heat.
Package.
But
Yeah.
that's a big mistake, I mean,
As it turns out, yes. I mean, he thought maybe his power could overcome, but that's his one strong point.
yes. And so he catches his foot with his thighs, and Orange has trouble
Yes.
extricating his foot from Johnny Cockstrong's loins. And so who comes out to help him but the Swamp Monster, his friend, member of the Gentleman's
Swampy.
Club, the Swamp Monster. And
That also
then
was a character that I couldn't figure out. I couldn't figure out what that character's deal was at
Yeah.
all. I couldn't.
You needed something a little more direct than the Swamp Monster
Yeah,
to
I'd
figure out the
say-
character.
They called him the Swamp
And that-
Monster, but then he's covered with. Sorry, carry on. This is a stupid bit, and I will stop it.
But yeah, now then it's the Swamp Monster and ring announcer Rich Palladino and the referee, I think that's Kevin Quinn,
Yes, that's Kevin
And-
Quinn.
Yes.
and a bunch of fans all in a line pulling on Orange Cassidy, trying to get his foot from outside of Johnny Cox's
And by
crotch.
proxy, pulling on Johnny Cockstrong's wiener.
There you go. They were all members of the Pull It Club.
The Pull
That
It
night.
Club, yes.
Oh.
Well, that's what Johnny Cockstrong's shirt said. This was
I
definitely in that sweet spot of Bullet Club parody shirts where everybody was doing it and it became really lame.
Yeah. But I love, my favorite part is they go back and forth for a while and then they square up as two wrestlers do after
Yeah.
a bunch of exchanges of reversals. But OC squares off with Cockstrong's crotch,
Yeah.
not with his face.
Low.
They square off face to dick.
Wieners, everybody.
So does orange juice play a role for Orange Cassidy, comparable to say spinach for Popeye?
Yeah, that's more or less the idea. But I mean, unlike Popeye, Orange Cassidy uses the orange juice as a weapon.
Ah,
So there's a specific trope in wrestling that this is meant to
yes.
emulate, which is spitting mist. Now, spitting mist is either green mist or red mist or occasionally black mist, and it's traditionally been done by Asian wrestlers in America.
one's for hit points, one's for magic points, and the other's for stamina. Right? Yeah. No, I'm familiar with this.
exactly. It's traditionally been.
I think Muta ascribed different powers to the different mists at
Well,
some
yeah.
point.
When you get into the specifics of specific angles, they would do different things. But it was a thing that especially Japanese wrestlers would do in America when they wanted to do the easy gimmick of like mysterious martial arts master that like they can conjure this magic, thing. And this is kind of lampooning that. Like, well, why do you got to spit some weird mist? I just spit orange juice. It stings.
It's
It's
acidic,
citrus, and all that. So that's where that comes from within like the wrestling reference. But like I explained that to you, you still pretty much got it. Like you saw him do it and you're like, oh, the orange juice, because clearly.
I think this might be a good time to describe Orange Cassidy a little bit more for the listeners.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So he comes out head to toe, well, not head to toe, but shoulders to ankles in denim, completely wearing denim jacket, denim jeans, and then a t-shirt of himself wearing a t-shirt of himself wearing a t-shirt where he is shirtless.
And his magnificent abs.
Right, his abs, and also aviator sunglasses, and in one back pocket, bottle of orange juice, and the other back pocket, his elbow pad for some reason that he then puts on after he takes his jacket off.
What's the song he comes out to? It's like some classic rock song.
That
I
is
totally
Jefferson
recognize.
Starship.
Right.
Jane by Jefferson Starship, which for some reason is perfect. I can't explain why, but it really captures that OC vibe really well.
He's got a little bit of a like Top Gun by way of
A little bit, yeah.
the like a lazy version of that guy. Like he's because he's kind of an update of an archetypical character. Like he's kind of an update of like I don't know, like Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High or something like that. Like he's a little bit in that. He's not a stoner, but he's like, I feel like shares a universe with a lot of other sort of more stonery characters throughout time.
Earlier in his career, before he had really worked out all of this stuff and before he was being used in a major capacity, it would much more be like he's nodding off at the turnbuckle while his tag partner would be doing all the work. But he doesn't really do that anymore.
Yeah, he was supposed to be strung out initially, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't.
Part of the gimmick.
The brilliant part is that none of this was ever said. It's all just, he's such a performer. It's all just out there. He does do promos, and they're fine, but like he doesn't put a lot of time into his promos. Like if he has to say a few lines, he'll come out and just be like, hey, and then say what he needs to say.
He mumbles,
and then
though.
they move on. Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, all right, I'm going to fight you.
I mean, he's kind of more of a physical guy. I feel bad that or not that I feel bad, but I regret spending all of my Buster Keaton comparisons on Shawn Michaels in earlier episodes because it's far more appropriate here.
Well, there's definitely a lot of Buster Keaton fans in wrestling.
Yeah.
But he has all these great little quirks, like his kind of thumbs up.
Right.
Everything is just totally nonchalant. Like at the beginning of the Star match, he goes to the corner as if he's going to stand up and do a big pose, but instead he just does the little kind of.
See, the thing that I find brilliant about that, he doesn't go to the corner and then not climb the turnbuckles. He goes to the corner, he grabs the top rope with intensity and authority like he's going to climb to the second rope. He then very animatedly puts one foot on the bottom rope and then just turns to the camera. He is putting in the effort to put one foot on the bottom rope.
We were talking recently about new moves. I was asking how often do people come up with new moves, and I don't know if it's new, but his splash, like his off the turnbuckle slump onto somebody else is
he just falls.
It is truly he just becomes just a big sack of crap. Like plopping onto his opponent, and it's fucking incredible.
It's great. And he'll do it no matter how far away his opponent is. And by that, I don't mean he'll get all the way across the ring. He'll just fall in front of the turnbuckle, whether or not.
This comes into play later in one of the other matches.
The Kikutaro match,
Yeah.
So just wrapping out a little bit more of the Cockstrong match. There's this great moment where, so he escapes Cockstrong steamroll, where he rolls over the opponent and then eventually lands with his junk on their face, which Cockstrong eventually does pull off. But earlier in the match, Cassidy escapes it and they go to the outside of the ring, and out of nowhere, he just effortlessly does this crazy twisting springboard dive to the floor.
Right.
And that's the amazing thing about Orange Cassidy. For all of his inaction through most of the match, at the drop of a dime, he can just pull off some incredible feat of athleticism, seemingly without even trying.
Yeah, sometimes with no momentum behind it. Like he doesn't even have to get a running start. He just boing.
Yeah, from a solid standing base. He is incredible.
And then he's getting ready to do a run from the corner. He's like, here it is, that running thing.
Yeah.
And then he just makes a bunch of random motions on his way over to the other side.
Like, he's the guy that taught me how to work out my neck. And you don't even hear, bodybuilders like, oh, yeah, this is what I do to strengthen my neck. It's like, no, this is how you strengthen your neck. And he has exercises for everything down the chain. Every piece of him is primed for all this.
Oh, yeah. Good exercises. Exercises that even after years I was still struggling with.
I watched both of you kill men with your necks on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah.
That I will not elaborate on. Carry on.
Well, you want to take us through the finish, and we should move on, because I want to get to the David Starr match.
So finally Cockstrong gets the steamroll on, and Cassidy's face when the steamroll is coming, when it's impending, is priceless. It's
Yeah.
just like he sort of resigns himself to it, but is still horrified. And then Cockstrong calls for the pile driver in the tights, like Den Shokodino. He's about to stuff Orange Cassidy's face in his trunks before then executing a pile driver, but Orange gets the juice, and Cockstrong blocks his face, but as Katie mentioned earlier, Cassidy gets him with the juice in the dick, burning his dick, and then he rolls him up for 1, 2, 3, and then casually poses on the ropes. And
And
that's it.
I just need you to confirm as men. Does it really hurt that much if you get citrus in your pee hole?
I have no idea.
I don't know either, but I'm guessing maybe a little.
Evan, you know, right?
I resent that. I mean, I do know, but
I want the listeners to know that Johnny Cockstrong's penis is not actually exposed in the match.
No.
He has some elaborate cod piece that draws your eye to his crotch, but he sort of acts as if it is just out freely.
I would imagine I actually have never put my genitals in any sort of citrus juice, but I would imagine that it stings, the same way soap does or something like that.
No, you've never dipped it in lime juice?
Oh,
Lime
no.
juice.
Just for some added flair in your sex
That would
life?
take a lot of work. I mean, orange juice maybe because it's plentiful and available. Lime juice, I'd have to squeeze all these limes. It's hard to make time for that.
Well, you get one of those lime juice, one of those lime juice containers that has like the precision
That's
squirter,
never as good though.
and then you just line it up, and then that's
Now,
never
lemon
as
juice
good.
would have to hurt.
Lemon juice would have to hurt.
Yeah, if I'm dipping my junk in a juice, it's going to be fresh squeezed. I'm not
Freshly
going to
squeezed,
store
indeed.
and buy a
This has
bottle.
been Contesting
Jesus.
Wieners.
I do have a serious question
Yeah.
about Johnny Cockstrong's penis, which is obviously as a wrestler, there's got to be a lot of complicated etiquette when it comes to like working out when you're working out a match with someone else. And like, yeah, I guess like, is that, obviously anybody who is in a match with Johnny Cockstrong has, I would imagine they've worked it out to some degree beforehand, and they know like, hey, he's like, I do a lot of dick stuff, and I would hope that if he continues to have a career, so I would imagine that he is respectful and does not do more cock stuff than he says.
He's not
but
just
I don't know,
like,
I guess just
I'm going to do the shining pencil dick to the face without his opponent knowing what that means. And they're just like,
Right,
you're
yes.
going to do the what?
So I guess I'm like, what would that conversation, as a professional, can you walk me through what that conversation backstage would be like?
Well, it goes back a little further than the conversation you'll have backstage. One thing you have to learn pretty quickly when you're doing wrestling training in the first place is that you're going to be all up in other people's crotches. And you have to get over it real quick, that it's not a sexual thing. It's not I'm touching. So just for, if you have to body slam somebody, for example, you have to get your arm all the way under their crotch. And you can't half-ass it. You can't grab them by the thigh or anything because it's unsafe. So once you get over all of that, it becomes a lot less of an issue for somebody to be like, look, most of my offense is crotch-based, so just please sell for my dick.
Yeah,
And
you're
then,
probably happy that you're not taking a bunch of bumps.
Right, exactly. They're not going to be pile drivering you over and over again. Although I also imagine it depends on how famous the person you're working with is. Like if you're going to get a match with Joey Ryan, you're probably gonna take the penis plex or whatever he calls it. And if you don't want to do that, you should probably refuse the match in the first place.
But yeah, but if you're in
Yeah.
a match with Stan, some guy from Staten Island who showed up, who
Right.
nobody else knows, and he smells like old milk.
Oh no.
And
You
the
know,
promoter
you probably don't
isn't
wanna-
going to put someone with Johnny Cockstrong who has problems with wrestling Johnny Cockstrong.
Yeah, I think
Sure.
that's in the promoter's hands. Right, and that's the other thing. If it's somebody who's completely unknown to the audience, then they don't have to do all of that stuff because it doesn't add anything to the show. And if you're somebody with like more clout than they have in wrestling, if the fans more into what you're doing, you could probably veto it and say, well, we'll do my stuff and it'll work.
All right, I feel
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with that answer.
All right, good.
So the next match we're talking about was later in 2018. It was from the Beyond Wrestling Tournament for Tomorrow Night 2. and it was a number 1 contendership match for the IWT. Well, at the time it was called the Powerbomb TV Independent Wrestling Championship. It's now the IWTV Independent Wrestling Championship. Is that the whole name?
I'm not sure what their exact nomenclature is right now.
It would be a little redundant to be like the Independent Wrestling Television Independent Wrestling Championship.
Yeah, I mean, they could do that.
In any case.
Anyway, it's for the number 1 contender for ship match for this between Cassidy and David Starr.
For this title that's defended amongst numerous indies that are all part of the IWTV network. And beyond being sort of the flagship. So what's cool about this match is, so to begin with, in all of these matches, we see, less so in the Cockstrong match, but in the other ones, one of Cassidy's main shticks, one of the first things he does when he gets in the ring with someone is do these ineffectual strikes, right? That they're not even really strikes, right? He like kind of kicks the guy's shin and he just kind of flaps his hand against their chest as if it's a chop and that kind of thing. And that's, you know, the traditionalists see that and are immediately like, what is this bullshit he's doing? But of course, I would say back to the traditionalists, look, it's not like people are selling these strikes. That would be phony looking and that would make wrestling look stupid. They're not selling it. They're like, what the fuck is he doing? Which all plays into this whole idea that he's, you know, lulling them into a sense of security or confusing them or getting them off guard in some way by doing it. So in every match he does, he starts off with these things and the opponent's like, what the fuck? And then he does something tricky and crazy to get the advantage on them. The difference with this match with David Starr is Starr doesn't have time for any of that shit and refuses to play into OC stuff at the beginning and just brutalizes him.
Such a perfect combination of characters because Orange Cassidy's whole deal is that he doesn't care. And as far as I can tell, having this is my second David Starr match I've watched, as far as I can tell, a big part of David Starr's deal is that he cares incredibly hard.
Yes, very much so.
He has a very strong moral sensibility, and he believes he's better than you because you don't have that strong moral sensibility.
He is the conceit of the match is very much that. He doesn't respect Orange Cassidy because he doesn't respect all the bullshit that Orange Cassidy does. I don't want to ignore the entrances beforehand. David Starr comes out and does his full entrance.
To Joan Jett.
The Bernie Sanders of professional wrestling.
That always gets a bit of a different reaction depending on the crowd. But the ring announcer says his whole spiel. He lip syncs along with his whole spiel. He gets the ring announcer to call him the ace of Beyond Wrestling 5 or 6 times. He gets him to turn to Orange Cassidy and say the same thing to Orange Cassidy. And this is what makes him a heel. Maybe he is the best, but he's a real dick about it.
And then Orange Cassidy, who usually his announcement is just from wherever, his weight does not matter. Orange Cassidy. This time, he has his own special ring introduction that he has written on a Dunkin' Donuts napkin. And this is just the most fucking hilarious thing ever. First of all, the announcement, David Starr's introduction starts off with, he's the cream in your coffee. Orange Cassidy starts off with, he's the cream in your something. I forget. I don't remember the last time I had cream in anything.
Does ice cream count?
Does ice cream count? And then it goes on and on about ice cream cake.
He's sitting in front of the ring announcer making a variety of poses, mocking David Starr's super serious poses. And Starr is standing there like with the ref Bankos.
Who is incredible, by the way. One of the most underrated, like low-key incredible refs on the indies right now, Chris Bankos.
The tattooed ref.
Yeah, the tattooed
incredible.
ref. He said, you know, that's been a hindrance for him, and he's like, I'll just do well, and then I'll get a job, even though I'm the tattooed ref, and that's how that's going for him.
Yeah, he's like, he straight up goes out there like, why can't I get jobs because I have tattoos? Because it's been such a thing in wrestling for a long time. The refs can't have tattoos. They only recently let Drake Younger stop wearing that armband they made him wear forever that hid like the one arm tattoo he had.
I thought it was because of scars from hardcore matches.
No, he has he has a tattoo, and they don't want their refs to have any visible tattoos. tattoos. They finally let him get away with having like the one. Because
start.
like it's an old school mentality of a ref shouldn't have anything on them that makes them stand out. But I feel like in this day and age, tattoos don't make you stand out. So many people have so many tattoos.
Especially in the Beyond audience.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a bunch of tattooed, bearded hipsters.
I wanted to point out that David Starr is selling Orange Cassidy's mockery of his announcement perfectly the whole time. And like every sentence is more nonchalant and missing the point than the last sentence. And just when it's about to be over, Rich Palladino says the last one of it, which is, "And the ace of Beyond Wrestling." And David Starr loses his freaking mind. And Banco starts holding him back, and he's waving his arms around like Wolverine in the video games. He wants to kill Orange Cassidy so badly. And it's just perfect.
In my notes, I described Orange Cassidy's movements during this whole thing as interpretive sitting.
Interpretive sitting. That's perfect.
Because they're all almost gestures.
Yeah.
Right.
He's so good at figuring out, like, to, take his thumbs up, where
Yeah.
it's really the least amount of motion that you could possibly do and still communicate that you're giving a thumbs up to somebody.
Yes.
Because he's not giving you a thumbs up, but he's not just holding his hand up, because then you wouldn't be able to tell what it is. And it's just, he really manages to, it's like, all right, you put your thumb up at about 18%. That's when people get what you're trying to do. So I'm going to leave it there.
The Beyond audience, going back into the bigger picture here, unlike a lot, I would dare say most of the wrestling that we watched, there's a whole lot of women in the Beyond audience.
Yeah.
Yes, I noticed
You
that.
noticed
Yeah.
that.
They get the hipster crowd, is what it is.
They get the hipster crowd,
It's
and they
the
are
new
the
wrestling
premier.
crowd.
They are the premier league right now that does intergender wrestling and treats the women with the same respect that they treat the men. So women who like wrestling come to the shows, and they feel safer at the shows because even if they have to report to somebody involved in Beyond, there's a much better chance that one of those people would be a woman.
The contrast between watching these Beyond Wrestling matches and watching the stuff from Combat Zone Wrestling for the last, man.
But there's an
Big
interesting
difference.
crossover, right? We watched the David Starr, Joey Janela death match that was at a Beyond show.
Yes.
So it's not one or the other, but I will say the new wrestling audience is very progressive, and you see the AEW audience taking on that cast, and there's a sort of pipeline down from the indies, and it's pretty direct from Beyond to AEW. Beyond has started to call themselves the tastemakers in pro wrestling.
Ah.
They very much
That they are. So this brings us to the match itself, right?
So Starr, he immediately breaks Orange Cassidy's glasses, like, I don't have time for this shit, and starts beating the shit out of him and busts his nose open. And so we see Orange Cassidy bleed and, sell in a way that up to that point, I hadn't really seen. Like, I had seen a bunch of Orange Cassidy matches, but I hadn't really seen a serious one until this one.
Yeah, and he can do them. And this match went a long way into proving to a lot of people, I think, that he can do them. With the character, even. Because even with the character, he's selling like he got popped in the face, because he got popped in the face.
And even with how serious it is, there are these little moments of humor. Like, Orange Cassidy likes to do the nip up with his hands in his pockets. And then Starr tries to do it with his hands in his trunks, and he can't do it.
Because almost no one can do that.
Right.
I read that differently. I did not read that as Starr trying and failing to do it. I read that as Starr mocking Orange Cassidy, because he had damaged Orange Cassidy to the point where he was not able to do, like,
But
his
Orange
trick.
Cassidy laughs at him when he can't do it. I think he was mocking him, and he was like, oh, I can do this shit too. But then he couldn't do it.
Oh, okay.
that's-
I think that's where they were going with it. But one way or another, they played into each other's characters very well there. David Starr's hubris came into play several times, where when he had Orange Cassidy on the ropes, he didn't try and finish him. He tried to play with him to show the crowd that he's better. But the crowd doesn't win you matches. Winning matches wins you matches.
Well, kayfabe-wise, indeed. But
That's the
great
performance,
thing,
right?
The great thing about how this match was booked, I thought, was that, Orange Cassidy gets an incredible beating from David Starr. And then he gets a comeback, and he gets a lot of near falls. And usually when a babyface takes a great beating, gets their comeback, and gets a bunch of near falls, they're going to lose, right? They're getting the near falls to show that they were able to fight back, but then in the end they lose. He gets all the near falls, and then Star gets a bunch of near falls, each of which you believe is going to finally end it, but he doesn't.
Yeah, they were all very good. Stars and Cassidy's strikes are both very good in this match when they're actually throwing them, as opposed to, Orange Cassidy's weak ones at the beginning of the match.
It's funny because everyone knows him for those like joke kicks, so to speak, that he throws in all his matches, but he actually probably has some of the best strikes in wrestling.
I was noting I was noting in an episode we just recorded that I really hated Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa's strikes on the NXT match that they had, because they clearly were barely making contact, and like, you can make a lot of contact and still be safe, and these guys were making good contact, because in the Gargano Ciampa match, they didn't have an audience, and when you're just in front of the camera, you're doing your thing and they're going to edit it. But when you're at a place like Beyond Wrestling, where the fans are right at the edge of the ring, you have to convince, as much as they know what wrestling is, you have to convince the fans in the front row that what you're doing is legit. Because if they think, well, this is bullshit, they're going to communicate that to the rest of the audience, and then you're going to have a dead audience. But they were laying it in properly, and it made you believe everything. They were having kind of an All Japan traditional style brutality off for a bit, and Eddie Kingston on commentary was loving it.
Well, yeah, Eddie Kingston, incredulous that Orange Cassidy could do an ankle lock. Like, how did he learn that?
Kind of a simple hold.
Yeah, right. I know. That's what was hilarious about it. And then at the end, the crowd chanting, "You can't beat him," to David Starr.
Yeah.
When he just wouldn't go down.
That was great. I will just say David Starr really got me in a heel moment in this match when he turned to Bankos, the ref, and called him a fucking idiot. I remember I was freaking. I'm like, he can't talk to Chris Bankos like that. Nobody should talk to Chris Bankos like that. And I'm like, oh, he just got me.
And I don't know if you picked up on it, Evan, but Starr has some incredible flurries of technical wrestling in this match.
Yes.
Just really quick things that he does that show how good he really is. And he's another one of these guys who doesn't do a lot in his matches, but when he does something, you notice it.
I had gone and read Starr's Wikipedia recently.
Oh, yeah.
And learned that he was an amateur wrestling champion in high school.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, and did that for a long time.
Even though amateur wrestling and professional wrestling are completely different, having an amateur background really, really helps.
Yeah. I guess so.
And in the end, Starr's hubris was his undoing. Cassidy catches him in an elaborate pinning combination known as the Mousetrap.
Well, first, Starr's ankle gives out.
I couldn't...
Starr's ankle gives out because of the ankle lock. And then, I love the fucking Mousetrap. It is such a brilliant looking wrestling hold.
I, couldn't do the math on that thing. Yeah. It seems really complicated.
Yeah, you watch it back a bunch of times and figure out where the arms go and where the legs go and where the momentum goes. And,
And no one's kicked out of it as far as I've seen.
Not that I know.
Out of Orange Cassidy's Mousetrap. Did he invent that, or is that like a lucha hold maybe that he got from Quackenbush or something?
I'm honestly not sure.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Maybe it's a Skida thing.
It seems like that kind of Yave lucha style submission or pinning combination.
But it was the perfect finish, I thought.
Is the Canadian Destroyer a joke move?
No.
Now it kind of
now
is.
It is. All right, so there's a lot to say.
It's a long story. Yeah, it's a long story.
I can tell it shortly.
Yeah, let's let Doc give the abridged version.
So almost about 18 or so years ago, a guy named Petey Williams, who was Canadian, started doing that move, called it the Canadian Destroyer.
Now, Amazing Red claims that he invented it, but anyway.
Yes, the Amazing Red claims he invented most moves. He stole half of them from Nova, I hope you know. So Petey Williams started using it on TNA, and it was the flashiest move almost anybody had ever seen. A flipping pile driver, surely that will kill you. Now, the thing about the Canadian Destroyer is that it's almost 100% in the person taking it to do it. The person doing it just has to get over the other person.
And that's obviously the case.
Yeah, and since you're rotating, it's actually less dangerous than a regular pile driver because you're not going straight down on your head. You're rolling backwards. So as more and more wrestlers realized that they could, in fact, do it, they all just started doing it. And over the course of the last 15 years, it's gone from the flashiest and most feared finisher in wrestling to a move now that wrestlers in their mid-60s do because they know how funny it is that they can pull it off. And the crowd will react like, oh,
Yeah,
man,
I saw
this
Ricky
guy
Morton do it.
Yeah, Ricky Morton did the Canadian Destroyer, huh? So it's perfect for a guy like Orange Cassidy, who's half a joke wrestler. Sometimes he does it where he just slowly crawls over the guy onto his back and pulls him down, but not this time.
I think
He
that's
did the
where it
full-
started, right?
Yeah.
It was the slow motion version. And then when he
Right.
started doing more serious matches, because he used to do the slow motion version, he started doing the regular version. The great thing about the slow-mo version, and I'll try to find a gift to send you, Evan, is that after he just rolls over the guy rolls over him, and then the guy stands straight up on his head like he got pile drived.
The fun thing I find with Orange Cassidy's is it's become like you never know when he's actually going to hit it.
Right.
Because sometimes he'll actually hit it like he did in this match, and 95% of the time, it's a fake out.
Yeah.
So you never know when and you never know when he's actually going to go for it.
Well, it's kind of like this. I'm sure there's a term for this in wrestling. It reminded me a bit of like a modern version of how Hulk Hogan's character sort of had a third act built into it.
Yeah.
The definition of Hulk Hogan was like him hulking up after. Is it hulking out or hulking up?
Hulking
I
up.
can't
Hulking
remember.
up.
Well, you notice in the Kikutaru match, they talk about Orange Cassidy pulping up.
Pulping up.
Pulping up,
Yes,
yes.
I did notice when he pulped up, and that was brilliant. Oh, one of the few acceptable puns.
But anyway, finish your point, Evan.
I love how Orange Cassidy has his character is defined by the moment where he starts to care.
Yeah.
Or at least, or the moment in which I guess he feels that he has successfully lulled his opponent into a false sense of security, and then he executes his.
Yeah,
you know.
I think, you can think of it as more continuous than that. He's always doing as little as possible to do what he
Yes.
wants to do. As the match goes on, that requires a little more. As little as possible is a little more than it
Yeah.
was. By the end of the match, it's quite a lot.
By the end, as little as possible is a lot.
And that's exactly what wrestlers need to learn these days, right? The greatest criticism against current wrestlers, and this is why I think the traditionalists should love Orange Cassidy, because he's a worker. You know, unlike these guys who just
Right.
go out and do flashy flips and stuff like that mean nothing. Everything Orange Cassidy does means something, and that's why his matches are so engaging.
Just the few matches I've seen of his, these three, and then the XSW match he had, and then I think there's been one or two others in there somewhere. But yeah, like the fact like he really can do this huge variety of stuff, and it seems like that. I mean, wrestling is entertainment at the end of the day, right? Like, and so if like you can go out
Yeah.
and wrestle a traditional match, and you can go and do a straight up comedy match like XSW, and then you could do things that are somewhere in between that. Like, there's traditionalists and purists in every art form.
I'd say the people who really hate Orange Cassidy aren't even like the Jim Cornette style traditionalists or purists. They're the hardcore fans. They're the like you'll see the guys with their arms crossed in front of them. Like, what the fuck is this bullshit? I came here for violence.
This
Yeah,
isn't
those
violence.
are the people who really hate Orange Cassidy, I think. And I've seen them very loudly pronouncing their hatred.
Is it sort of like ardent death metal fans who refer to bands with singing as pussy vocals?
Yes, that
Yes,
You
exactly
kinda
that
nailed
kind
it.
of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, completely nailed it.
So, to everyone's surprise, Orange Cassidy not only beat David Starr in the match we watched to become the #1 contender to the Powerbomb TV Independent Wrestling Championship, but then he beat Hot Sauce Tracy Williams for the title and became the IWTV champion and defended it all the fuck over the place, including XSW. We watched that match. And including this promotion ICW New York, which was actually running in New Jersey that night. I don't know anything about ICW, but they were running in Ridgefield, New Jersey, and they featured an IWTV title defense between Orange Cassidy and challenger Kikutaru in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Kikutaru,
What does ICW stand for? Do we know?
I believe it's Insane
Insane
Championship
There you go.
Wrestling, but honestly, I don't know.
Everybody come to wrestling.
Everybody come to wrestling.
It's
I like that.
crazy, wacky.
It's crazy,
crazy
wacky.
wacky.
I like
That sounds like something out of a Homestar cartoon.
I mean, we are watching Orange Cassidy versus Kikutaru. It's crazy wacky.
So Kikutaru is perhaps the greatest comedy wrestler of all time. He's been doing it in Japan for like 20 years now, I think. He was originally Ebisan, which is a play on the Japanese god of fishermen and luck, Ebisu. And so that's what his face looked like. You'll see statues in Japan that look just like Kikutaru's face. I'm not sure why he changed it to Kikutaru. I think it probably has something to do with trademark stuff between Japanese companies or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so he is like the god of fucking Japanese comedy wrestling. And so, it made perfect sense that he would get a title shot against Orange Cassidy.
Is the Japanese god of fishermen copyrighted?
I don't know. Maybe the certain image he was using could have been.
His name was not Ebisu, which is the name of the god. It was Ebisan. And I don't understand Japanese grammar enough to know quite what the difference connotes. But,
right.
I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know why he changed his name. So it could be copyright stuff. That's usually why wrestlers change their
his name is Kikutaru now. He's been based out of Las Vegas for a few years. He's been wrestling all around America because we love his act.
They announced him from Las Vegas, Osaka, Japan.
Right, Las Vegas, Osaka, Japan. He starts out, as usual, like not taking Orange Cassidy seriously. Orange comes out doing his whole championship entrance with his belt in the JanSport backpack and, holding his arms just high up enough to let you know he's the champion.
That's what I like about this match. Doc and I and Katie, none of us had seen this match before.
No.
We wanted to pick one of Orange Cassidy's IWTV title defenses, and then when we saw there was one against Kikutaro, we were like, all right, well, we have to see this. And I think it makes a great contrast because with the match with Cockstrong, you have two comedy wrestlers, and they both kind of are wacky. If anything, I think Cockstrong might be the wackier one in that match.
Yeah.
I would argue that the penis-themed wrestler is a little wackier, yes.
And so Cassidy is more playing it relatively straight for him there. Whereas in the Kikutaro match, it's Kikutaro who plays it straight and lets Orange be the wacky one. And that's really funny because Kikutaro looks ridiculous to begin with. So for him to be the normal one is hilarious in and of itself.
Now, Kikutaro knows how to do this. He's been in enough comedy matches that he knows how to play the straight man in all of it. He's done it before whenever he kind of works heel. He doesn't play complete straight man. But you're right. He lets Orange do all of his goofy Orange stuff. And that's great. But he opens the match talking to Orange Cassidy on the mic. He says in his slightly broken English that they will have a comedy match and the audience will laugh and everybody will have fun. And isn't that great? And then he offers to shake on it. Orange takes his hand. Kikutaro kicks him pretty low. Screams psych, haha, goes to pick up Orange Cassidy for a body slam. Orange is too heavy for him. Cassidy falls on top of Kikutaro and pins him. That's the first fall.
Referee Chris Levin presiding, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Our dear friend Chris Levin. He's amazing. Kid
He
ref.
added so much to the match, just with his reactions and his faces.
Absolutely. I want to point out about the handshake. Orange Cassidy usually gives the super limp handshake. But Kikutaro, and I think it makes sense that Orange Cassidy would shake Kikutaro's hand for real. So yeah, then they, after that first fall, Kikutaro does the whole thing again.
He does.
But this time kicks out. And then they do a whole shin strike exchange. So Orange Cassidy's doing his little fake kicks to the shins, and Kikutaro's doing it back. And they do that for a while.
They both go back and do the low super kicks.
Yeah, until Kikutaro is tired and asks for a timeout.
Timeout. Always a request in wrestling when you hear somebody shout timeout.
I was surprised I haven't seen that before because it's such a hilarious.
Yeah.
It's such a hilarious.
Oh, heels do it a lot.
Yeah, all the time.
Back in the day, they used to do
it's a common.
They were real heels.
Yeah, it's a common heel tactic to be like, no, back him up. I need a minute.
And then the announcers will be like, there are no timeouts in wrestling. What is this? Football?
He's just a coward.
Pussy ass football. Yeah.
That's an exact quote.
With their timeouts and their pads.
Right, their pads and their helmets.
Vince, this was usually Vince McMahon on commentary, at least what I'm thinking of. And he'd take any opportunity to take a shot at football. So as the match goes on, Kikutar, he drinks the orange juice, which gets a "you sick fuck" chant from the audience.
They do a lot of back and forth spots with that orange juice bottle.
Yeah, so Kikutaru gives the ring finger salute.
Ah,
to
the ring
audience,
finger salute.
Not the middle finger. And Doc,
Yeah,
I
don't usually tell a lot of stories about like stuff that happens inside Chikara. It's very insular. But I'll tell this one. Is we brought in Kikutaru, who was very nice to everybody, I might add. I talked to him for a little while in the locker room. He was way cool. And usually when people who were not inside Chikara come to work for Chikara, during the pre-show meeting, Mike Quackenbush would tell everybody, just remind her, Chikara's a PG show. Don't use any foul language or sexual innuendo or rude gestures. And Kikutaru just speaks up and he's like, well, what about this? And he does the 2 ring finger salute and everybody laughs except Quackenbush, And Quack thinks about it for a second and he's like, no. And he's like, you sure? Because Kikutaru just keeps doing it. Like, you sure? I can't. This is okay, right?
I would have let him do it.
I would have let him do it. I thought it would have been hilarious.
One of my favorite spots of this whole match is just Chris Levin taking an Irish whip from Kikutaro for seemingly no
Yes.
reason other than he was the one standing right there and stopping just short of the big boot from Orange Cassidy in the corner, who does a big boot by literally standing still in the corner and just lifting his leg up.
Lifting his leg, yeah.
My favorite part of the match, I think, is when Kikutaru chops Orange Cassidy a couple of times, and Orange Cassidy almost taps out from getting chopped and crawls to the ropes as if he's gonna escape the pain somehow by getting to the rope, and Kikutaru pulls him back into the ring, and then they struggle over the orange juice.
Yeah.
And then when Orange Cassidy finally gets a sip, that's when he pulps up.
That's when he pulps up. He needed his OJ. Yeah. One of the commentators is like, oh, is he a pulp guy? It's like, yes, he's a pulp guy.
And then, Katie, you mentioned earlier the splash where Kikutaru is completely across the ring. And Orange Cassidy, it's like he's going to try to make it. But he
The
doesn't
funny
really
thing
try to make
is,
it. He
I
just
know
falls.
the man behind Orange Cassidy could absolutely make that jump.
Oh,
No
yeah.
questions asked. He's totally capable of doing it. That's
Coast
just
to
not the character Orange Cassidy is, though. Orange Cassidy just
Right.
falls.
I want to point one minor detail out about this splash. He did go a little further than he usually did to indicate that
That
he
he
put
was
it all
trying.
out there. He made it almost halfway to halfway across the ring. Yeah, it's just absolutely brilliant.
How long has Cassidy been wrestling?
Since 2004, 2005, something
Yeah.
like that.
When did Orange Cassidy itself start? 2010, maybe?
I think it was much earlier than you think.
Earlier, yeah. 8, right.
I think I've told this story before on the podcast,
Yeah.
but I'll tell it again now. Doc and I were at King of Trios 2009 at the Fan Conclave.
The arena.
And sitting at a table was Chuck Taylor, longtime associate of Orange Cassidy. We didn't know who Orange Cassidy was at the time, but Chuck Taylor's sitting there, and he has a T-shirt in front of him that says Orange Cassidy on it, and he says, "Hey, you want to buy an Orange Cassidy T-shirt?" And I'm like, "No, not really. I don't know who that is." And he's like, "Oh, but it's a great shirt, Orange Cassidy." And I'm like, "Well, who's Orange Cassidy?" He's like, "Yeah, it's Orange. You don't know who Orange Cassidy is? Come on, it's Orange Cassidy." And I'm like, still no. And Doc is trying to put me over, and he's like, this guy here is a philosophy professor, or he's in grad school, or whatever I was at the time. I was still in grad school. This guy's going to become a philosophy professor. And Chuck Taylor's like, well, you know what goes really well with being a philosophy professor? An Orange Cassidy T-shirt. And he just does this full-on carny wrestling thing, just really trying to sell me this thing. And goddamn, I wish I had bought it.
You should have bought it.
You should have bought it.
You would have been ahead of the game.
I would have had the classic Orange Cassidy
And
T-shirt.
now the two of them are in a stable together in AEW. They are best friends along with Trent, and they really are. So that's great.
I would wear an Orange Cassidy shirt, I have to say.
Yeah.
I would express my... Because what this kind of falls into... This is a little bit the same thing that I had watching XSW. This is more, obviously, a lot more, in the definitely wrestling sphere.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I really love it. It obviously is wrestling, but it also still feels like this completely other thing outside of everything you've shown me and the lineage of the WWE and the fucking.
Do you like Orange Cassidy better than Kenny Omega?
Whoa, man.
Those are two different wrestlers.
But they may
And
be
you know
the
what?
two most popular baby faces in AEW for two very different portions of the audience.
I gotta say, I have to say, so far, I mean, I think my three of my favorite wrestlers that you have shown me thus far are Orange Cassidy, Kenny Omega, and Chris Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that they're all in AEW is very exciting. It's the difference between a great dramatic actor and a great comedic actor, even though Kenny Omega is also very funny.
Yep.
But I feel like what they both do, what they share is a virtuosity.
Yes.
I feel like they both have, the two of them are two of the most readily apparent, accomplished athletes of any of the wrestlers I've seen so far. Like, not to, shit on other wrestlers or anything, but
and a creativity on top of that.
Yes.
Like, there are a lot of great athletes in wrestling. They're kind of a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
But having someone who's that great of an athlete and a great creative mind on top of it, that's what's really rare.
yeah.
Well, before the finish, Kikutaro hits a low blow and then hits an absolutely beautiful German suplex and then Michinoku driver. So, like, if you had any question about whether Kikutaro can actually wrestle, in like 3 seconds he shows
he knows what he's doing.
that he is quite adept. And I think that's a really important point of the match. Because actually, so I watched this other match between Cassidy and Kikutaro, and it was very similar, but there was no part of the match where they did that. And I think for Kikutaro, it was like, this is an important championship title match. Like, even if we're going to joke around a bunch, we need to show that, we really are two top wrestlers who deserve to be fighting for the IWTV Championship. So, Kikutaro puts Orange Cassidy in a front face lock and cuts a whole promo.
Right.
About how he's happy to be on the East Coast. He calls it the East Coast Championship because I don't think he really knows. He didn't care to really learn the name of the title or anything. He just cuts this whole promo and then eventually gets put in the mousetrap, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then he gets pinned and he gets up. And then he starts arguing with Chris Levin, like, okay, so that's 2 falls. We're doing 3 falls, right?
And Chris just sells it so good. Like, just kind of puts that cringe face on, like, oh, that's not how this works, buddy.
Yeah, first he's arguing that he should get another fall because it's 3 falls. And then they explain to him, no, it's 2 out of 3 falls. You lost 2, so there's no reason for a 3rd fall. And then Kikutaro seems to have forgotten that the first fall ever
it was the
happened.
first thing in the match.
And they need to remind him. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, okay.
One thing that happened in the middle that I forgot that I'm going to state now, at one point, they're doing their thing. Orange Cassidy goes down, Kikutaro covers him, and Chris Levin counts to 2, and Cassidy kicks out, and Kikutaro turns to Chris Levin, and he says, that was 4. And he starts arguing, that was 4. Levin says, that was 2. And he says, that was 4. You're racist. That was 4. And Levin sells it perfectly. Like, Levin is such a great performer. I can't, stop gushing about
I can't say a negative word about the man.
Oh, no. He has shown me a picture of Brian Knobs' anus, and I'll never forgive him for that. But other than that, he's the best guy.
Speaking of which, if any of you
It'd
ever
be
want to
great
see a picture of Brian Knobs' anus, just ask Chris Levin.
It would be great if Kikutaro, had haggled a bit. Like, he's like, it's 4. And Levin's like, no, it's 2. He's like, okay, 3 then.
That would still be 2, though.
Yeah. No, it's 2. The ref says 2.
We've gotten a good overview of what Orange Cassidy does. But one of the great things about him is every match really is unique. Like, there are certain things he always does, but he finds something different to do in every match that I've seen of his. And there were a whole bunch of IWTV title defenses, some more serious than others. But I think, it definitely would be rewarding to go through all of them.
I'm going to take a guess at what's going on under the hood here. His character and his performance is clearly something that has been, forged over time. It's clearly been him being really vigilant about finding like what works, what doesn't, what is the best way to communicate the specific, I guess, character that he is portraying. That trying to figure out how to phrase it, but I don't know. So it seems like something that he has meticulously built up over time, and I'm sure that a big part of that is going into every match like, how do I refine this? How do I find what works best between our two characters here?
Right.
How do I further develop this character by bouncing it off of other people?
Well, he actually does care a lot about the development of it, which is why he takes that specifically so seriously. For every match he does, he's like, well, who am I wrestling? I'm only half of this. How do our ingredients cook?
And he's also totally committed. Like I said before, the traditionalists should appreciate his adherence to kayfabe and that kind of thing, because I don't know, I went to the one XSW show that he was at, and the second he walked in the door and there was, it was fans in the lobby, he was Orange Cassidy. Right. There was he was in full character, and it's not hard.
I mean, he just is Orange Cassidy. It's he's honestly, he's not exactly like that, but he is kind of just like that.
Which brings us back to what you had mentioned all the way at the beginning, guys like Ric Flair. Well, what's Ric Flair's gimmick? Well, you can't really describe it in 2 words. But when Ric Flair walks into a room, he's just Ric Flair. When Ric Flair walks into a bar and sits down, he's going to buy drinks for everybody, whether or not he can afford it. He'll tell you stories all night long, and then he'll get up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym, because that's who he really is. Maybe he won't actually get his buddies to trap you in a steel cage and break your arm, but that's the only difference.
And to me, that's the beauty of wrestling. Like, you only really get these kinds of characters in wrestling. Like, you see them elsewhere in media. Like, it's like, oh, that person is a real character, and like a particular, metal singer or whatever, like Ozzy Osbourne, the character is a little bit different, but from Ozzy Osbourne, the person, but there is that continuity. But in wrestling, that's the whole point, or at least it was for a long time. And to some degree, when it's at its best, it still is. That the character you're being presented with on television is not just a part that's being played. It has some connection to the actual person who's playing.
Ozzy's the perfect example of a more mainstream celebrity, because they did that whole long TV show about his regular life. And sure, you go into his house and he's kind of a drunk, slurring grandpa who's kind of lovable and has to go to his job, and his wife tells him, you're going to perform in Detroit on Saturday. But still, he's at home in his couch like, I'm the fucking Prince of Darkness. Because he is.
And his kids won't listen to him.
Right, his kids won't listen to him. I didn't watch too much of the Osbournes, but
their neighbors keep calling the cops.
I distinctly remember him being like, okay, go out. If you have sex, wear a condom. And Kelly being like, Dad.
And their one daughter just constantly insists on having her face blurred.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
No, and it's fairly recently I read an interview with Marilyn Manson a couple years ago. And I thought it was really sad, because the whole interview, he seems like he's still trying to hold up this like scary Manson persona. And it comes off as really pathetic.
Weren't you there when he almost got squished?
I was. Yes. I saw the fucking guns fall on him.
No.
It was sad, man. He was obviously drunk off his ass during the show. He claims that he was trying to hold the thing up because it already started falling. But from my perspective, being there, it looked like he was drunk and fucking with the thing.
Well, not to get too into it, because we're wrapping the episode up, and this is not contesting Marilyn Manson, but it's really come out in the past few years what a problematic human he is.
Oh, well.
Unfortunately.
I don't think it was much of a secret.
Yeah, I read his autobiography in junior high school, and I didn't have quite the moral compass that I have now. But it was already clear to me that he had a lifestyle that wasn't exactly wholesome, and not just because he was doing things that more conservative Christian people or whatever might object to, but he was doing truly abusive things to people.
I also feel like he's, that really demonstrates the peril of committing yourself to a character that is not necessarily a reflection of who you are. Like, I'm sure maybe he was that guy to some degree in his 20s, but it's not something that, compared to like Tom Waits, right? Who, like, I'm sure Tom Waits' persona is kind of a character, but I'm also sure he's a lot like that.
Right.
When you talk to him, like, you know, he just kind of turns it up a little bit. Or even like David Bowie, who, like, maybe we think of as somebody who had all these different personas and characters, but I'm pretty sure all of those were still basically just like David Bowie turning it up a little bit, and he was still that guy to some degree, as opposed to a complete fabrication or performance, or just a thin character based around what was shocking to people in 1996.
And as he got older, Bowie, that is, he adjusted that character. Whereas Manson's adjusted his character a little bit, but he's largely still trying to be the same character he was in 97.
He started
96,
with Mechanical Animals. It seemed like he was actually developing his character in interesting ways. And then his record sales tanked and he regressed. And then he's just been afraid to let go of that 90s shock goth kind of character because that's where he thinks his bread is buttered. But the saddest thing about it, and I think this, you know, we can tie this back to wrestling and with Ric Flair and people like that, at some point, even if you're still playing that character, you don't have to live it quite as hard anymore.
Right.
Like, I remember, Evan, you telling me about Tom Waits. He quit smoking cigarettes at some point in his life. He still smokes them on stage.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's part of the character. But it's like, you don't have to be that 100% all the time. And you're not, that doesn't make you like a fucking poser or a sellout or something.
All of
like
those concepts should die by the time you turn 30 and realize you might be a different person when you get older than you were when you were younger. And so's everybody, and that's okay. Including all your idols. Kill your idols, folks. They're all just people.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Kill your idols. They're all just people. Right. This has been Contesting Wieners.
Except for Orange Cassidy. He's not. He's not real. No, he very much is.
This has been Contesting Wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at ContestingW. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's anything that you think I should see that will help me learn more about wrestling. Let us know if there's anything about Orange Cassidy that we should talk about on this week's mini-sode that we're going to drop on Friday.
And the premium episode, we still have a premium episode to record about Orange Cassidy.
Yes, and if you want to hear premium episodes in general, we put out one a week, and you can hear one for $5 a month, so it's like $1.25 per episode if it's a 4 Wednesday month. If it's a 5 Wednesday month, I don't even have the ability to do that kind of math on
$1
what deal
Evan.
you'd be getting.
$1.
Pay us more so that Evan can go back to school and learn math.
Yeah, it's getting really difficult as I age. And for $1, you don't get premium episodes, but you do get these sweet main feed episodes a couple weeks in advance. And
pretty much as soon as they're done being edited, they go up on Patreon.
And for $100 a month, you do get the secret episodes of Contesting Wieners.
Oh, yeah. We work real hard on those.
Oh, stay out of the ocean.
The Patreon does really help, especially because ever since we've been doing this under quarantine, it is a lot harder to edit these.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it. And also, we appreciate you no matter what, even if you're not a premium listener.
Certainly.
You're
Thank you for
still
listening.
a viable human.
Stay out of the ocean, guys.
Stay out of the ocean, everybody, especially now.
Do not go there. Thank you. We love you.